It was a strangely quiet evening in the piggy house. The clouds were gathering outside. The wind was howling, as if someone was trying to whisper something. To distract herself from the gloomy weather, Peppa suggested,
Let's play hide and seek.
Great idea.
I'll count first.
Peppa cried out happily and stood facing the wall. She closed her eyes and began to count loudly.
1, 2, 3.
George, chuckling, ran off somewhere into the hallway. His footsteps echoed around the house and gradually died away. When Peppa counted to 10 and opened her eyes, it seemed to her that the house had become darker. The lights were on, but the light seemed dim and yellow, as if someone had dimmed it. She went to look for George. First, she checked the wardrobe in the bedroom. A black shadow flickered between the coats, but when Peppa pulled the things aside, there was no one there. Just clothes and a damp smell, as if the wardrobe was in the basement. Peppa shuddered. A tail was sticking out from under the bed. The girl exclaimed happily,
Aha! Got you.
She bent down, but there was no brother under the bed. Only a thick layer of dust, deep scratches on the floor, and a strange cold. Suddenly, the lights went out throughout the house. Daddy Pig turned on the torch. The beam trembled and picked out the walls, which now had long, deep scratches on them, as if someone had drawn claws along the plaster. A dull thud came from the basement. First one, then another. Then a slow scratching on the metal door was heard. Mummy Pig put her hand to her mouth and whispered,
He's not playing with us.
Peppa felt a chill run down her spine, and then she heard George's familiar voice.
Found me.
But the voice wasn't coming from the room. It was coming from the big mirror in the hallway. Peppa came closer. George was standing in the reflection, his back to her. His small figure didn't move. She called,
George?
The reflection turned around. George's face had no eyes. Instead, there were jagged black crosses. He smiled widely. The mirror shook and cracked. A thin hand emerged from inside, too long, unnatural, with pale skin. The fingers reached straight for Peppa. She screamed and fell backwards. At that moment, a shadow ran down the corridor, similar to George. All the lamps turned on at once. The light grew bright, as if nothing had happened. The whole family was standing in the living room. They were smiling too widely. Their eyes were fixed. Peppa was breathing heavily. She tried to say something, but her voice was shaking. George stepped towards her, smiling, and said in a strange, low voice,
Now it's your turn to hide forever.
That morning in Peppa Pig's house, everything was as usual. Mummy Pig was making breakfast, George was playing with his dinosaur, and Peppa was drawing. Daddy, will you buy some firewood for the fireplace? Asked Mummy Pig. Of course, Daddy Pig chuckled. I'll go into the forest. There's plenty there. Daddy Pig took a basket and headed toward the familiar forest, the very one where the children used to collect leaves with Madame Gazelle. Everything seemed ordinary. Birds were singing, the air was fresh. But the deeper he went, the stranger everything became. He walked past the old clearing where they once played with Rebecca Rabbit, then past the fallen tree where George had once taken a tumble. Everything was familiar, but something was missing. The forest grew suspiciously quiet. No sounds, no birds, no wind. Daddy Pig stopped. His glasses had fogged up. He wiped them and suddenly realized he didn't recognize the way back. Snort, snort. Must be the rain's fault, he tried to joke. Maybe I just took a wrong turn. But the puddles were too deep, the ground too sticky, and the trees seemed to block his way. Daddy Pig tripped. His glasses cracked. One boot got stuck in the mud and stayed behind. He called out for help. Peppa? Mummy? Anyone? Only echoes replied, and something else. A soft, rustling sound. He ran blindly through the forest, past the old path where they once rode bikes, past the stream where Peppa had once found a shiny stone. Everything looked different, darker, sinister. Somewhere in the distance, a face flashed by. It was pink, but didn't look like any familiar character. It was something else. "Daddy!" A voice came from the thicket. Peppa's voice. "Daddy, where are you? We're here." He ran toward it, but found only emptiness. The forest laughed, quietly, dully. Daddy Pig fell. With his last bit of strength, he crawled toward a clearing, the one where they once had a picnic with Miss Rabbit. He was covered in mud, scratched up, his mustache wet, his glasses broken. Ahead, a light flickered, a street lamp, the kind Mr. Bull usually switches on when fixing the road. "Help!" But the lamp went out. Daddy Pig was left alone, in the dark, with voices, in that forest, the one no episode ever talks about.
Tea happened that night. Daddy Pig had fallen asleep on the couch and the television was still on. Mommy was putting George to bed and I just wanted to watch some cartoons. I pressed the remote, but instead of the usual sounds, there was this loud static. The screen flickered once and then he appeared. Mr. Potato. But not the one we know. He was different. His eyes were glowing red, his mouth twisted into a sharp, evil grin, and he wore a black hat, like something out of a horror movie. He didn't speak in a funny voice. He screamed. He screamed my name, over and over, like he knew I was watching. "Peppa, can you hear me?" His voice was rough, cold, like it came from under the ground. I froze. The remote didn't work. The screen kept glitching, and Mr. Potato kept getting closer and closer, even though I knew he couldn't come out of the television. Right? I grabbed my flashlight from the floor. It was right next to the couch. The beam flickered in the dark like it was scared too. I ran to the socket and pulled the television plug out of the wall. The screen went black, but then I heard it. "Why did you do that, Peppa? I'm not in the television anymore. I'm with you now." At first, I thought I imagined it, but then I saw the shadow on the floor. It was huge, with tiny arms and a giant head in a crooked hat, and it was moving toward me. I screamed and ran. I hid behind the armchair, then under the table, even in the closet. But he always found me. He knew where I was, like he could smell fear. He didn't run. He whispered, "Play with me forever." Every time I turned on the flashlight, I saw his face. Red, glowing eyes, that awful grin, and something dripping off his body. Mud, or something worse. I don't know how long it lasted. A few minutes? Hours? At some point he was standing right in front of me. I was shaking. My flashlight was barely holding on. Then he leaned in close and whispered, "If you turn off the light, I'll disappear. But if you turn it back on, I'll become real." I had no choice. I turned it off. And now, darkness is my only friend. I never turn the lights on. Never again. Because if I do, he'll come back. And if you're listening to this right now, and your room is lit, turn off the light before he sees you too.
It was just an ordinary day at Peppa Pig's house. Warm sunlight was pouring through the windows, and Peppa was sitting on her bed, scrolling through games on her phone. Suddenly, the screen flickered, and a new message appeared. The sender was unknown. On the screen, it simply said, "Hello, Peppa. I'm nearby." Peppa smiled. She thought it was just one of her friends playing a joke. She put the phone aside and returned to her game. But the phone buzzed again. Another message popped up. "Why did you turn away? Look out the window." Peppa slowly lifted her eyes. The window was open. The thin curtain trembled lightly in the wind. Outside, there was no one, Just the gray sky and the empty yard. Peppa felt her heart race faster. She tried to ignore it, convincing herself it was just a prank. But the phone buzzed again. This time the message was short, only 3 words. Don't look back. Peppa froze. The room suddenly felt quieter. Even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. And of course, she turned around. Behind her, everything looked the same. Her familiar room, and yet something about it felt wrong. The phone screen lit up again. The final message read, "Now you're alone." The screen cracked. The lights went out. And in the reflection of the window, Peppa saw herself, but not the way she remembered.
It was Peppa Pig's birthday. The whole house was getting ready. Balloons, cake, presents, everyone was happy.
Yay! I am 5 today. Where is my present?
Right here, Peppa. We hid it under the table. Open it.
Ha! This isn't a toy. It has a note.
Inside the box was a burned, old piece of paper. On it, shaky handwriting read, "You forgot, but we remember."
What does that mean?
That night, Peppa couldn't sleep. She kept feeling like someone was watching her through the window. When she woke up, the same note was at the edge of her bed. But now, there was a drawing of her family on the back, except their eyes were blacked out.
Mommy, Daddy, George. Why are you drawn like this?
Don't be silly, Peppa. Go back to bed. Next morning, footsteps echo, eerie silence. The next morning, Mummy Pig was gone. Her teacup sat on the table, but she never came downstairs.
Daddy, George, where is Mommy? Daddy.
She ran into the living room and found another note, a new drawing. Now, only Daddy, George, and Peppa were left, and under it, a chilling message. She was the first. Night again, scratching, muffled whispers.
Who is there? George.
Do you remember, Peppa? Do you remember how you laughed? How you forgot?
The window rattled. Shadows crawled along the walls. Portraits on the wall began to fade. First Daddy, then George. Only one face remained, hers. By morning, the house was empty. They say the Pig family's house is still there. Empty, but if you pass by at midnight, you can hear a soft whisper, "You forgot, but we didn't."
When Peppa was little, she had a favorite teddy bear, Teddy. She carried him everywhere, to the park, to the store, even to the bath. He was old and worn out, but Peppa believed he was alive. George was the same. His green dinosaur was like a real friend to him. They held tea parties, built little houses for them, told them stories. Those were happy days. Until one evening changed everything. Peppa accidentally dropped Teddy in the mud. He got soaked, dirty. One of his eyes came loose and dangled on a thread, and his paw tore at the seam. Mummy Pig wanted to throw him away. "He's dirty, Peppa. We'll get you a new one." But Peppa shouted, "No, he's mine. He can hear." They put the toy away in an old box up in the attic. Peppa sat by the window for a long time, looking upward, as if waiting for him to return on his own. From that night on, the house didn't feel safe anymore. Strange sounds echoed in the night. Creaks, quiet footsteps. At first, the parents said, "It's just mice." Then, "It's the wind." And later, "You're just tired." But one night, George woke up in tears and said that his dinosaur had walked to his bed, all by itself. He just stood there and stared. Peppa began to fear the dark. Once she opened her eyes and saw a shadow on the floor. Soft, round, like a bear. She blinked, and it was gone. "I must have imagined it," she whispered. "I must have..." But one night, things changed. Peppa woke up and couldn't move. Something was pressing down on her chest. She heard soft footsteps approaching. In the moonlight, she saw Teddy, sitting on the floor. That same old bear. One eye dangled by a thread, his paw torn, stitches sticking out. But he was looking right at her. Peppa didn't scream. She froze. "You left me, Peppa," he whispered in a low, raspy voice. From the shadow stepped George's dinosaur. But now it had sharp teeth, and its eyes glowed red. They both stepped closer. "We were your friends. And now, you belong to us." The room went dark, the ceiling vanished, the walls began to move, children's drawings appeared all around, a house, the sun, Mummy, Daddy, and in every picture, Peppa with a twisted face, standing beside the bear and the dinosaur, with claws and glowing eyes. She jumped from the bed. The door, locked, the window, boarded up. Everything disappeared, only darkness remained, and footsteps getting closer, and then silence. In the morning, Daddy Pig found them sleeping on the floor, hugging Teddy and the dinosaur. Everything looked peaceful, but Peppa didn't wake up right away, and when she finally opened her eyes, she said nothing. Since that day, she hasn't spoken again. Only at night, you can sometimes hear her whispering, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Teddy. Please, don't come back." It was a normal morning. Peppa and George were playing in the garden while Daddy Pig was cleaning the windows and Mummy Pig watered the flowers. Everything seemed as usual, until George suddenly stopped and pointed toward the far corners of the yard. "Peppa, look," he whispered. There, where there had never been anything before, stood an old, rusty swing. It looked like it had been pulled out of the ground and forgotten for years. Peppa frowned. "Where did that come from?" she asked. Mummy Pig glanced at it and suddenly turned pale. "Don't go near it," she said firmly. "There was never a swing there." That night, Peppa woke up to a faint creaking sound. She walked to the window and saw the swing gently moving back and forth, even though there was no wind. George was awake too. He looked at her and whispered. She was there, sitting. A girl covered in mud. She was staring at our house. The next morning, Peppa decided to investigate. George was too scared and stayed behind. Under the swing, the grass was flattened like someone had been sitting there for a long time. A small tag hung from one of the chains. "You sat too long? Now it's my turn." Peppa reached out and touched the seat. Instantly, everything around her vanished. She found herself in a grayscale version of the playground, silent, distorted, and cold. The same swing sat there, but it moved like it was breathing. From deep in the fog came a whisper. "It's time to switch places." Peppa turned. Out of the darkness stepped a shadow that looked like her, but with blank glowing eyes and a crooked, unnatural smile. "Now you're here," it said softly. Peppa ran. Somehow, she found herself back in her house. Everything looked normal, but something was off. She looked into the mirror, and what she saw wasn't her reflection. It was the shadow. Standing in her room, smiling, she screamed. "George," she called out. No answer. The house was silent. In the living room, George was gone. Only his toy dinosaur sat on the table, covered in dirt. Through the window, she saw George on the swing, still. She ran outside, but by the time she got there, he had disappeared. A new note dangled from the chain, one by one. Peppa returned inside. The silence felt heavy. She sat on her bed staring at the floor. Then, the creak again. She slowly moved to the window. The swing was swaying gently in the darkness. But this time, she was on it, or something that looked exactly like her. The figure slowly lifted its head and locked eyes with Peppa. Then a whisper. "You're already on it, Peppa. You just haven't realized yet."